This week, the writer's journey turns 100.
Welcome to the
big
Writer's Journey
100. We're gonna
I'm
have
Michael
some fun.
Laran, a science fiction and fantasy author on a journey to go from nobody to bestseller, and I'm documenting every step of the way. Tune in every week as I pull back the curtain on my writing life and how I'm building a writing career while working a full-time job, raising a family, and attending law school classes in the evenings. You can find show notes for this week's episode, a free starter library of my fiction, and much more at michaellaran.com.
Hello and welcome to episode 100. 100 is a good number, and if you have been listening to this show for at least the last 52 weeks, you know that I start every episode by saying blah 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 is a good number. Well, 100 is an exceptionally good number because the writer's journey is now in the triple digits of episodes. 100 episodes, not missed a single week, every week for about the last 2 years, which is really, really cool. And it's a major accomplishment for me. I'm celebrating, I'm smiling ear to ear, and I want to start this episode with a heartfelt thank you. I am so humbled and so appreciative of the fact that all of you who listen to me every week invite me into your earbuds, and I've become a part of your weekly routine. That's really crazy to me, especially because this show is so personal. I talk about things that are so personal to me, and it's certainly not mass market appeal that a lot of the self-publishing shows have. And it just means a lot to me that you're listening, and I hope that my experiences and my journey are instructive to you in some way, and I will continue to find ways to improve the show and add value. So I just want to start with a heartfelt thank you, and we're going to have some fun. So what I thought I would do is I'm going to use this week, we're going to skip the personal episodes or the personal updates, and we're going to use this week to look back on the first year of the show, because I recognize that many of you listening may not have heard the early episodes of The Writer's Journey. And when I look back at that, it's like, oh, wow, this was kind of cute. It was kind of funny. But that made the show into what it is today. So when I first started, I took an experimentation mindset. You know, this was an idea that I had, I think at like 3 o'clock in the middle of the night. And I was like, what if I did a show that was like an audio journal of all the things that were going on in my life, and I did it every week? And what if I did the tagline of this audacious claim of watch me going from nobody to bestseller? What would happen if I did that? And I started this like I start all of my experiments. And you guys know I do a lot of experiments. And when I start all of my experiments, I assume they're going to fail. And so I just did what I just kind of did my thing. I didn't have any expectations. I went and found a podcast provider, like a host. Libsyn is my host. They do a great job. I got the cheapest plan that I could for $7 a month, and that meant that I could upload 50 megabytes of audio. And when you're talking about audio, that's not very much. It's about a minute a megabyte, which meant that my shows had to be extraordinarily short because that's all I could afford. So I scripted all of my shows to make sure that I could stay within that length requirement. And that's why the first episodes of the show for that first year were like 5-10 minutes, maybe 12 minutes max. It's because I had significant money and time constraints. And lo and behold, the show was popular. People listened to it, and people kept listening to it, and the subscriber base kept growing. And I upgraded the plan, which is why now I can make the shows as long as I want. But when I look back on that first episode, wow, I was really strapped, and it's just amazing how you evolve and how you never know what experiments you do will succeed. Because now I consider the writer's journey to be a core part of my platform, which is why I don't miss a week. It's very important to me. So what I thought I would do is let's look back. So the very first year of the show, I had a very strict format because I was worried that I wouldn't have enough to talk about. So the first week of the month, I did writing life episodes. So I talked about what it was like to be a writer. I talked about some unique perspectives from a philosophical standpoint of what it was like to balance writing and law school and all these things. And then the second week of the month was my sketchbook, which I'll talk a little bit more about that. But those were kind of the fun episodes where I kind of did some unique things, and I kind of dramatized and did some bad acting. And then the third week was behind the scenes. So I picked a novel that I was working on or a book that I was working on, and I went behind the scenes and talked about my process of doing it. What's my process for people watching? How did I write my last Dragonlord series? How did I write my Android X series? That sort of thing. And then the fourth week of the month was where I did my personal updates, where I talked about what I was working on. And then I ended those with kind of a funny, usually a skit or a bad ad read. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to play greatest hits from that first year. I picked one selection from each of the weeks, and then the last week I had two selections because I just thought one of them was too good not to do. So week 1 of every month, and I followed this schedule religiously, the writing life. What is it like to be a writer? And I want to start with a clip that was the very first thing that you heard if you ever heard episode 1, which was an excerpt from an interview that I did. And I was talking about how to discover yourself and find yourself. And in many respects, I still think that that is the manifesto for the show. So I'm going to play that and I'll come back. The people that I've learned, a lot of the influencers that I've gotten to know over the years, it's not that they're doing anything unusual. They're not putting on a show, when they go on YouTube or when they go on Instagram. They've just figured out how to be themselves on the internet. Whereas I think a lot of people don't know how to do that. A lot of people are uncomfortable putting themselves in front of the camera or opening that door into their office and showing people kind of how they work. And so I think if you can get comfortable with that, that's a good thing. A lot of people, they want to know that step-by-step process. What can I do to sell my book here? What can I do to get my book in front of all these people? But they haven't done I call it the iceberg work, right? It's all that work that's beneath the surface. You can only see the 20% of the iceberg that's above the water. But if you go below the water, it's huge. And so all of that work, don't forget about that work that's underneath the surface. The iceberg work, right? I think a lot of us are works in progress. I really do think that. And I think that who we are today is not who we're going to be tomorrow, especially when you think about writing. And that iceberg work, I think, is so important. I also think it's so important to learn how to be yourself on the internet. That's precisely what I have done. In fact, I am probably the most socially awkward person you will ever meet. Like, if you meet me in person, I like to think I'm super nice, super gracious. I will talk to you all day long, but I'm the most socially awkward person ever. And I will face anybody listening to this in a challenge if you want to argue with me. I'm socially awkward, but you can't necessarily hear that when I turn on the microphone. And you don't necessarily see that when I'm behind the camera doing my YouTube videos. And so I think every writer has to figure out how to shed some of the things that they might be self-conscious about and figure out how to make them their best selves appear first when readers meet them for the first time. And maybe that's doing an audio podcast. Maybe it's doing a YouTube channel. I don't know what that is, but I think every writer owes it to themselves to find that, because as we become more digital and as more and more writers make their living and want to make a living from their writing, that's going to be extraordinarily important. So that was our first highlight. Second week of the month, I alluded to that I did sketchbooks. So one of the reasons that I think that I don't suffer from writer's block in the same way that a lot of writers do is that I am literally sitting on a treasure trove of ideas. So ever since I was a kid, one of the things that I did, and this was one of the, I don't know if it's an indicator of success or what, but I captured ideas. I was religious about capturing ideas. Anytime I came across an idea, I made sure to write it down. And when I was in high school and middle school, I carried little composition notebooks around with me. There was a Walgreens right up the street from my house, and I would get an allowance. It was like $10 or something like that. It wasn't very much because I had to do all the chores. And I would walk up to this Walgreens, and I would buy these little composition notebooks that were like $1 or $2. And I would carry them in my back pocket with me. And anytime I was in a new place, anytime I was in a place where I was like, wow, this is really, really cool, or this would be a great book idea, I pulled out my notebook and I wrote it down. And I did this for years. I did it for years. And then when I switched digital, I started using the Evernote notebook. or Evernote digital notebook. And then I did that for years. And since 2011, I've been capturing ideas, usually several ideas every week. There was one period where I was capturing several ideas every single day. And I was taking pictures and just capturing anything. And that's why I'm sitting on tens of thousands of ideas of just random things, And so when I come across a situation where I don't know what to write next, I just pull out my sketchbook. And I literally pull it out and I figure out, okay, what if I put this idea with that idea? Or, there was that one time when I was in a church, maybe I could use that in this novel. And voila, the writer's block is gone. And so what I did for the show was I took a page out of my sketchbook. That's what I called it. I called it my sketchbook. And I would take it and dramatize it and put it to music and read it kind of in a dramatic way as a way to kind of be entertaining. So what I've selected for you now, this next greatest hits highlight, was a very interesting time in my life. It was a time when I was in college, and it was when I came across a dangerous pyramid scheme. This is everything you're about to hear is 100% true. There is danger, there's love, there's suspense, and I'm going to play it. Have you ever been in a situation where things seem perfectly normal, and then something happens that makes you realize it's actually not very normal at all? In this week's episode, I'm going to talk about a run-in I had with a pyramid scheme company. This memory stands out as one of the strangest and most bizarre things I've ever experienced, and something I'll remember for the rest of my life. Hello and welcome to episode 15 of the podcast. Today I'm telling you my pyramid scheme story. I've told this to friends, but never the writing community, so here goes. The year was 2006. I was a freshman in high school. I was going to a small private college in Iowa, and as one of the only black people on campus, I was trying to make the best of it. If you've never met me in person, it probably wouldn't surprise you to know that I'm fairly outgoing and friendly, even though I'm socially awkward and an introvert at heart. I remember introducing myself to a lot of different people my freshman year, just trying to find the people that I could relate to. That's where this story begins. It's my freshman year of college, and I'm standing in line at the college grill, waiting to buy a hamburger. There's a guy standing in line in front of me, and I smile and nod to him. He's got slightly balding strawberry blonde hair, which is unusual for someone his age. He's short, wearing a blue basketball cap, a gray athletic shirt, and basketball shorts. We start chatting and actually end up eating dinner together. He tells me about how he's majoring in business and how he is actually an entrepreneur, selling products in his spare time. He strikes me as a geeky kind of guy, but not the entrepreneurial type. I, not knowing what entrepreneurs are at the time, am impressed. I want to know more. He invites me to a weekly conference that he attends and says that he'd love to have me learn more about his company. Being a young college student with no money, I agree to join him. Mistake number one. A few days later, we arrive at a local hotel. My acquaintance is dressed up, wearing a black suit and tie, which is a complete wardrobe reversal for him. There are signs everywhere, directing us to a conference center, a gigantic ballroom in the back of the hotel. Crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling, a big stage in front with blue and green lights shining in the center. There are people everywhere, crowds and crowds of them, like your typical conference. They're all dressed up too. I'm wearing a lavender button-down Oxford and jeans, and I feel out of place. As we're pushing through the crowd, people are calling out my acquaintance's name. As he shakes hands and waves at people, I think to myself, this is awfully elaborate for a weekly conference. He introduces me to his district manager, a mousy guy who's my age, which is saying something because I'm only 19. We sit at a table, and the manager tells me how he's invested his life into the business. He had a full ride to a prestigious school in the Midwest United States, but he dropped out of college to be a businessman, and he's all in. I ask him what the company sells, and he tells me that they sell products. He hands me a brochure. There are energy drinks, shakes, exercise accessories, things I would hardly call entrepreneurial. It also doesn't make sense that he keeps claiming he's an entrepreneur, yet he's employed by this company. I pepper him with dozens of questions, and to this day, I don't think that he ever gave me a clear answer on what exactly the business was or how it made money. Instead, he asked me point blank, "Do you want a new future?" I'm taken aback. "You're a smart guy," he says, "and black. You could really make a name for yourself in this industry." I politely decline. He asks again, I decline. He asks me again, and I tell him, "Look, dude, I'm cool." Then he gets up and walks away, tells me that he'll check in with me after the conference. He's not going to take no for an answer, and that's when my gut tells me something's not right here. More people sit down, and I find myself sitting next to an Asian woman about my age. I ask her some questions and we start chatting. I'm sensing some flirting, and she's pretty attractive. She's dressed in a tan blouse and a long pencil skirt. There's a pen tucked behind her ear, and she has a portfolio on her lap with eloquently written notes about profit and loss, supply and demand, target markets, funnels. She strikes me as smart and assertive. She tells me that she works for an aquarium manufacturer by day, and that she dreams of being her own boss. I ask her what she sells, and her answer makes 0 sense. Still, I like her personality and her energy. The conference begins. The lights dim, everyone claps, and a tall man in a double-breasted suit jogs on stage. He looks and sounds like a pastor. What ensues is a sermon, but not about God. This sermon is about business. The guy chastises everyone in the room for not activating their full potential, and he then praises them in the next sentence for being brave and taking their lives into their own hands. He talks about how he bought a brand new Cadillac because he's a good businessman. He calls 2 people up to the stage, hands them the keys to their brand new Cadillacs because they're the salespeople of the year. He tells the whole crowd that this is possible for everyone in the room and that he wants this for everyone in the room. Everyone in the room claps. The whole time, the woman is taking notes, filling up page after page. I'm confused. I'm chatting with the Asian woman the whole time, and we're hitting it off. Despite the fact that I have no clue about the business she's in, I'd like to get to know her better. I'm pretty shy when it comes to these things, but I mustered up the courage to ask her out for ice cream. Her eyes light up when I ask the question, and then she says to hold on. She needs to ask her manager if he would give her permission to go out with me for ice cream. She ventures through the crowd, asks the manager I confronted earlier. He gives me an evil look from across the room. Then she wanders back over and says, "I'd really like to go out with you, but he won't allow it." My head is about to explode. I tell her thanks and good luck. Then I turn and I run like hell. True story. So that's my pyramid scheme story. I researched that company later that night and found out that it was, in fact, an alleged scheme. I read horror stories of people who invested tens of thousands of dollars into it, only to find themselves in dangerous physical, financial, mental, and emotional danger, usually from manipulation. I won't share any more because I don't want anyone to know what company I'm talking about. This is some scary stuff. I don't want to leave my house and have a black sedan in front of my house waiting for me. No thanks. I can laugh about the event now, but I remember feeling sorry for that woman. She was definitely in over her head. Whatever kind of relationship she had with her boss, it couldn't have been healthy. Not if she couldn't think for herself. I read stories of managers controlling every aspect of people's lives, even telling them what to wear and say. I'm pretty sure some manipulation was at work here. I think sometimes that maybe I should have done something. Call the police or reported the incident, but I'm pretty sure that wouldn't have ended well for her or me. Or maybe I was completely wrong and misread the situation. Or maybe she misunderstood what I was asking. I don't think so, though. I was pretty clearly asking her out on a date, but I never saw her again. As for that acquaintance that dragged me to the event, I don't know what happened to him either. So again, I can't make any of this up. All of that happened. All of it happened. And you want to know something funny? So I mentioned at the end of that episode that I never knew what happened to that guy that invited me into the pyramid scheme. And I don't know. I think about him from time to time. So I just happened to be on my lunch break the day before I recorded this. I happened to be on my lunch break. And I was walking, and lo and behold, this guy is on the street. Like the guy that invited me into this pyramid scheme, he is walking the opposite direction. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, What the heck? Complete random chance that I would come across this guy. And then he's like, hey, Michael, how you doing? I'm like, oh, hey, how's it going? I said his name. And then, fortunately, I was with a group of people, so I just kept walking. I kept walking. He kind of stopped like he wanted to talk to me. I kept going. Maybe the universe was trying to tell me something. I don't know. Maybe this is one of those times I'm not listening to the universe. All right. So we're going to move on to week 3. Third week of every month, I played behind the scenes. So I went behind the scenes of one of my novels. So I'm not going to go behind the scenes of one of my books this time, but what I've selected for you was, I thought, a pretty popular episode, and that was documenting my process of people watching. So one of the reasons I've developed a really good sketchbook is because I've learned how to become a student of people. So anytime I'm in a new place, I'm always watching people. And sometimes, a couple times a year, I'll go somewhere with the intention of watching people, not being creepy about it or anything, but just seeing what I can learn. Because I have often found it's the little micro gestures, it's the micro expressions. Those are the sort of things that really make your characters come alive in a story. And so what I am going to play for you now is my process of people watching. Have you ever been people watching? There's a park near my house that I like to people watch in. Let me tell you about a typical day here. The sky is filled with the most amazing cirrostratus clouds. There's birds chirping in the trees, wind chimes jangling from a house neighboring the park, children playing, yelling at each other in delight, and every once in a while a cyclist speeds by. And all amongst this idyllic scene are people, each one with a unique story. I found people watching to be an endless stream of character and story ideas, and I have a tried and true process for every session to capture everything I see accurately. It works like magic. In this episode, I'm going to share my process with you. Hello and welcome to episode 18 of the podcast. In this week's episode, I wanted to talk about my process for people watching because it makes for deeper stories and deeper characters. A lot of people watch, but I've found the most effective sessions I've had were the ones where I did it intentionally. Now that sounds counterintuitive, right? After all, if I said I was going to the park intentionally to find subject material and watch someone, that'd be a little awkward, a little stalkerish, and a little creepy. That's not what I'm talking about. I almost never people watch on purpose. But when I find myself in a situation where the people are interesting, I have 7 questions that I ask myself that help me capture the setting, the people, and the mood with stunning accuracy. These 7 questions are magical. It's amazing how well they work. It goes without saying that whenever I find myself in a great situation, I pull out my phone. I use the Evernote app to capture my thoughts, and a benefit of Evernote is that it lets you take notes, photos, and sound. Anyway, the first question is, what do I see? I write down what I can see. I start with the setting. I describe a sentence or two, what it looks like. Then, if I'm watching a particular person, I describe what they're wearing, what they're carrying, or what they're sitting or standing on. Colors are also important and something that may not be easy to remember later. The second question I ask is, what do I smell? If I'm in a restaurant, that's really easy. I describe the food in the air, and if I'm at a park, it's usually grass or flowers. If I'm elsewhere, then it's usually more difficult, and I have to really pay attention to what my nose is telling me. And I've found over the years that I've been able to develop and describe some things that I wouldn't have never called out at first glance. Unless there's a really strong smell, this is something that I tend to forget later when I'm trying to recreate the scene, so I try my best. Also, if I'm watching someone, I'm probably too far away to smell anything on them like cologne or perfume. Sometimes if I can't smell anything in the moment, I'll make up details that I think go with the situation, just so I can capture it in all dimensions. The third question I ask is, what do I hear? What's the surrounding ambience like? If people are talking, what are they saying? I write down dialogue to the very word, paying attention to dialect, cadence of speaking, and word choice. This is so important when you're creating characters. If there's music or if there's someone singing, I get creative about describing the music that they're performing without capturing lyrics. The fourth question I ask is, what can I taste? If there's no food involved, I look for anything that might help me capture this. The fifth question I ask is, what can I touch? I'm usually not in a position to touch someone, and usually that would get you put in jail. So instead, I focus on textures. Textures on the floor. Textures on surfaces like jewelry and clothing. The person's skin. Describing textures is one of the best ways to develop as a writer. Most people can describe sights and smells, but a pro weaves in texture. Textures also have the benefit of doing double duty when you're using them. If I said that a woman had an alligator purse, you would both see it and imagine the texture. See what I mean? And you've probably caught on that I'm simply describing the scene in the five senses. But there are two more questions that take my observations to the next level. The sixth question I ask is simple but fun. What's the story here? For people, it's, what's this guy's story? Or what's this woman's story? At this point, it's all imagination. I use what I can see to make some simple assumptions about the person. Even if those assumptions are wrong, it doesn't matter. It's just me exploring mentally where I think this person is coming from. If it's a man and a woman sitting across from each other, based on their body language, I can tell if they're on a date, married, or just friends. Any of those scenarios is always interesting to explore. I start with an assumption and ask, what's the story? As I describe it, I then ask, what if? What if this couple sitting at the table next to me in the French restaurant are on a date? What if the guy is from Canada and the girl is from New Mexico? What kind of culture clashes would they have? What's his story? What's his mom like? Where does he like to travel? What really pisses him off? What does he do for a living? I write and I write and I write. And then I ask the last, most important question. What does the person think of this place? Something I learned from Dean Wesley Smith, a writer who I look up to, is that it's not enough just to describe the setting in the five senses. Your character also has to have an opinion about the setting. If you're in a hot swamp and you hate swamps, well, that's going to color what you see, smell, hear, taste, and touch, right? But if you're in a restaurant with someone of the opposite sex and you're having the time of your life, you're going to have a much more favorable opinion of the setting. I like to write a few sentences about the person I'm watching and what they think about the place that they're in. This way, everything they see and do is filtered through that lens, and that guides what kinds of words and descriptions I would use if I were to ever write them in a story. It's a simple but very effective tool to help me get inside a character's head. So that's how I people watch. To recap, I ask, what do I see? What do I hear? What do I smell? What do I taste? And what can I touch? For bonus points, I then ask, what's the story here? What if questions? And what does the person think about the setting? This is the process I use to capture everyday scenes. You'd be surprised how much I consult my sketchbook when it's time to write my novels. And another secret that I'll give away, when I'm writing a scene for a novel, I like to take a minute or two and imagine the scene in my mind. I imagine the people, sights, tastes, smells, textures, sounds, and character opinions before I put the character into the scene. I find that it makes things more realistic. If you want to see my people watching process in action, check out a couple of my previous sketchbook episodes. Episode 2, Love in the Food Court, and My Run-In with a Weird Pyramid Scheme, Episode 16. All right, I hope you found that to be helpful. And I have another episode that's pretty popular. It was last week's episode, or the week before last, actually, where I did a greatest hits episode. And I talked about my process of people watching. So you can listen to that as well if this was up your alley at michaelloran.com/episode 7. All right, moving on through our monthly schedule here. So the fourth week of every month was when I did my personal updates and I talked about what I was working on. And then I would end that episode. That would take up about half of the episode. And then I would end with kind of like a funny skit. So I was like, okay, I got to be silly. I got to do something funny here. And I would end with like bad ad reads, or I would do commercials, or I would do these skits where, it was like a dramatization between me and another person. And it was really me. The other person was me, but I would like pitch modulate the voice to make it sound like it wasn't me. And so a recurring character on that was Oswald the robot, who is my biggest fan. And it would usually begin with him asking me a question, and I would answer the question. Oswald today is still my biggest fan. Maybe I'll bring Oswald back one day. Oswald McChipperson. But what I'm going to play for you next was not an anecdote, but a story of one of my more interesting jobs that I've ever had. So I would like to play this for you. In other news, I found something cool to share with you guys. We had some really bad rains in Iowa this summer, and my basement flooded. And fortunately, the basement's unfinished, so everything's okay, and we didn't lose much. But as my wife and I were going through my old things, I found a box of old cassette tapes. Many of you know that I've had a lot of odd jobs over the years: janitor, soda delivery guy, claims adjuster, auctioneer, etc. Well, one of the most interesting jobs I actually had was moonlighting as a therapist. Now, I've been told that I have a calming voice, and I'm good at building rapport with people. Many years ago, I found an ad on Craigslist for a company that does therapy sessions for high-risk clients. And when I say high risk, I don't mean like suicide or drugs or anything like that. I'm talking high risk to society. That's right, this company held therapy sessions for supervillains. When they heard my calming voice, they hired me on the spot and paid me $2,000 an hour. I helped a lot of bad guys become functioning members of society, and it's one of the crowning achievements of my life that I don't talk about very much. Anyway, I happen to have a recording from my therapy session with a villain called Wrathgeist the Destroyer. I diffused what could have been a very difficult situation for the galaxy. Check this out. Hello there. Could you pronounce your name for me again? I don't think I caught it.
My name is Wrathgeist the Destroyer, and if you address me as an equal one more time, I will rip you apart and feed your bones to the crows.
Well, that's a hell of an introduction. Wrathgeist, it's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Michael. Do you understand why you're here?
I got caught.
Yeah, big time.
I would do it all over again if I could.
The part where you obliterated a skyscraper or the part where you ripped a hole in the Andromeda Galaxy?
Both, human.
Okay, well, let's talk about that then.
It was glorious.
There are other things in the universe, Wrathgeist, that are glorious without, death. For example, just the other day I had a cup of jasmine tea. It smelled like grapes, and it was just a great experience, and it was just fantastic.
I enjoy tea very much. You have impressed me, human.
That's awesome, Wrathgeist. Tea really brings people together. I have some in my cabinet. I just bought a tea set, actually. How about we continue this session Gong Fu style?
I would like that very much. I prefer my tea crimson, infused with the blood of my enemies.
Why didn't I see that coming? Why don't we change topics? Have you ever considered alternatives to crime, Wrathgeist? You've been all over the universe, so would it be safe to assume that you enjoy travel? I hear Helsinki is nice this time of year.
Are you calling me weak?
Quite the opposite. What I said was...
Rawr!
Whoa, hey Wrathgeist, I didn't mean to insult you.
Screw this therapy. Screw society. I will destroy it.
Hey buddy, we're making good progress. Why don't you... Hey, stop! No!
Puny human.
Well, that didn't end quite like I thought it did. I could have sworn that I convinced him to patch a hole that he made in the time-space continuum. That must have been a different client. Anyway, I learned a lot from my short-lived time as a therapist. Probably not a job I'd take again. Okay, that was totally fake. But you gotta have some fun when you're doing this stuff, right? I always like to end these update episodes with my own dismemberment. It usually involve me dying in some way, and I don't know, it's just fun. I've always felt that if you're gonna have fun, let some people have some fun at your expense. Writing can be really serious. We're super focused on selling books, but at the end of the day, we gotta have some laughs too. So I couldn't resist playing another update episode for you. And this was one that actually happened in my neighborhood, believe it or not. It happened on Halloween. So this was for the Halloween 2018 episode. And it was about my visit to a haunted house. Check it out. We have a special question from our special guest, Oswald. Oswald asks, "What is your favorite Halloween memory, Michael?" Great question, Oswald. I don't know if this is a favorite memory per se, but it's pretty vivid. When I was a boy, maybe 5 or 6 years old, my grandfather took me trick-or-treating. Somehow I got separated from him. I encountered some older kids, and as a joke, they stuffed me in a trash can. My grandfather found me later that night in a clown costume and drenched in my own tears. True story. So again, not my favorite memory, but one I never forgot. But I've always kept a positive mindset about life, despite bullying. Even when other people don't like me or treat me poorly, I make the best of every situation. In fact, last year on Halloween, I decided to take a walk through my neighborhood, to see all the kids' costumes and house decorations. I took a turn onto a street that I had never walked down before, and all of a sudden I was standing in front of this huge Victorian house with cobwebs everywhere, stained glass windows lit up like fire in the moonlight, and crows on the lawn eating a rotting pumpkin. I live in a modern neighborhood, and there aren't any Victorians, so I thought, damn, this is pretty cool. I sidestepped a pool of blood in the driveway and decided to knock on the door and ask these people who did their decorations, because they were awesome. A flock of bats flew out of the porch, scaring the crap out of me. Then, a hunchback guy with a buzz cut and 2.5 teeth opened the door, frowning at me. We started chatting, and he told me that this was actually a haunted house, and he told me to go away. I told him I loved haunted houses, and I asked him how much a tour cost. He smiled a gummy grin, swiped a lantern off the wall, and offered to show me around for free. Believe it or not, I have a tape from my visit to the world's scariest haunted house. Check it out.
Welcome to the world's scariest haunted house. I am your guide Igor, and if you're lucky, you will die a swift death tonight. This way, please.
Oh, hey Igor, how's it going, buddy? Good to be here. I like what you've done with the drapes. Very tasteful.
Hurry up.
Oh, shit.
Pathetic weakling. He didn't even last 10 seconds. Ha ha.
Hey, Igor, would you mind giving me a hand?
Wait, you're alive? There's a 50-foot drop under that trapdoor.
I climbed up, but, I need to find a restroom. I may or may not need to change my underwear.
Down the hall. Second door to your left.
Thanks, you're the best. Holy!
Wait, you're still alive? My man was supposed to hack off your limbs with his chainsaw.
That actor was something else, Igor. You guys were funny. At first, I thought he was Jason, but when I complimented him on using an electric chainsaw instead of gas, he lifted his mask and smiled at me, wagged his finger. Real nice guy. Needs a dental appointment, something awful, but his heart's in the right place.
Follow me. I'll make sure we dismember you for real this time.
What was that, Igor?
Nothing, sir. Please, right this way.
This is a great house. How much do you think it's worth? Those Victorian crown moldings are incredible, and I bet these stained glass octagons look incredible on a sunny day.
You want to live here?
Well, the tarantulas have got to go, but sure, why not? $100,000 and I could turn this place into an Airbnb.
Wait right here, sir. When I pull this lever, let's see if you keep your head.
What was that, Igor?
Nothing, sir.
Whoa, damn, that was close.
Why did you duck, you fool? You're nothing but an ignoramus who deserves to die, you stupid.
Hey, Igor, look out. Giant axe coming your way.
Oh, crap.
Hey, Igor. You guys are killing me, man. That was a funny joke. Okay. I'll turn around. How about you put your head back on and show me the rest of the house? Igor? Ooh, Igor. Oh boy. He's a goner. I guess I better get out of here and call 911. Where was that trapdoor again? Probably should avoid that if I can. Hey, I like that grandfather clock. I wonder how much... One of these days, I promise to find a tape that doesn't result in my grisly death. Anyway, I guess I need to learn how to pick up on context clues. I totally misunderstood what Igor meant when he said it was a haunted house. You live and you learn, I guess. Okay, that didn't happen either. But I really like that one. The pitch modulation. I got probably, I had way too much fun voicing Igor on that one. So yeah, that was my visit to a haunted house. That also ended in my grisly dismemberment for just in time for Halloween. So you know what I want to do next? I want to read some recent reviews of the show because, you know, one of the things I haven't done is asked for reviews a whole lot. It's just not something I typically do. But, you know, there have been really great people who have left great reviews and said some really wonderful things about the show. And so I thought that I would take some time and read those. And as people start leaving reviews in the future, that might be something I incorporate into the show. So if you would love to leave me a review for this show and talk about what the show has meant to you or when you or where you listen to it, that would be awesome wherever you listen to the show. So Audio Philly writes, Michael Laran brings great info, and he does it with unmistakable kindness and a pleasant voice. Really good production values, too, and always improving. Thank you very much, Audio Philly. Reddit recently says, so I will be binging at work while entering expenses for the end of the month. There we go. I came across your YouTube channel a few weeks ago when trying to decide whether I would give dictating a try. I binged some of your other videos and for some reason didn't write down your name or your YouTube channel, but today I found it in my history. I've been looking for a podcast for the ride into work. I'm writing the first draft of a novel, an urban fantasy, and it's been tedious, but it flows better, so your video on dictating was beyond helpful. 2 weeks in, and I went from 0 to 60 pages, and good luck on your writing journey. Thank you for sharing so much of your knowledge and your experience. Thank you very much. And another one from the QSU HD, pleasant to listen to and full of great advice, inspiring stuff. Kovar says, look forward to each podcast, always inspiring and full of great advice for aspiring authors. And I'll read one more from 007 Pandas. Love that name. There have been so many serendipity moments over the past several years, culminating with this year when I decided to move forward with more conviction with my writing. Michael Laran's YouTube and podcast has sparked my desires and interests as a writer. His voice is perfect for imparting his education and knowledge for independent writers while covering all aspects of what is needed to succeed. Thank you, Michael Laran, for your time and conviction in educating the novice and aspiring writer. So I don't share that to toot my own horn. I just share that because it makes me feel good. You know, when you guys post these reviews, it makes my day, and it especially makes my day when you link to them and share them with me. And it just means a lot. So if the writer's journey has done something for you, I would love to hear it in a review. You guys write me and with fan mail every day, and it's just really great to hear so many of you picking up and going after your dreams, right? Because there are so many people who will never do what you're doing. And that's just flat out honest. Like, there are tons of people that say they will never write a novel. And it just touches me so much when you guys write me and when you leave reviews and tell me that I started dictating and I'm writing more than I ever wrote before, right? Or I was talking to someone the other day where they said, I'm actually writing on my phone. Like, he told me I finished my novel while I was waiting for Avengers Endgame to start. Like, I had like 500 words left and it was taking a really long time. And I finished the novel on my phone while the last trailer was going. And I'm like, oh, that's like such an amazing compliment. Thank you. And it's like, the best compliment I think you can ever give me is to just take action on your dreams, right? To write that first novel. And if I have helped you in some small way, that's great, but that's not really what this is about. It's about you, and it's about you taking action on your dreams, even if it's a small micro action. And like I said, I'm just thrilled that this show has played some part in that for many of you listening. So I'm going to end this week again where I left it, and that is with a heartfelt thank you. I'm looking forward to the next 100 episodes and what they're going to bring. And I'm also looking forward to continuing to improve this show so that you continue to enjoy it and find value from it. And so with that, I guess I'm going to sign out for the week. This has been a longer episode than usual. So I kind of warned you about that. But we'll be back next week, and I'm going to be talking about some experiments that I've had with Amazon ads that are like mind-blowing. Like, I cannot wait to share this information with you, as well as some updates on Cold Hard Magic, which is coming closer along to the finish line. So with that, I hope that all of you have a wonderful week, and I will holler at you next time.
Thanks for joining me this week. If you enjoyed this episode, you'll enjoy my backlist episodes at michaelaran.com/podcast. For your free starter library of my favorite novels, join my fan club by visiting michaelaran.com/fanclub. If you're a writer and want to connect with me further, check out my YouTube channel, Author Level Up, for helpful writing advice at authorlevelup.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back next week.